Hey, Wooddale students, we're so glad that you are joining us tonight, and I am really glad to have Corey with us tonight. Corey and his wife Liz are members of Wooddale Church, and Edina kids, you might recognize Corey because he helps out with the youth team, and apparently you've got some pretty good energy vibes,
Yeah,
Corey, that
I love
happen.
playing games with the Wednesday night youth. It's fantastic.
And is it your personality that fuels it, or caffeine, or
It's just I enjoy getting to energetic moments with them. You know,
Yeah.
it's fun to be with people. It's fun to do that.
That's
Yeah.
so true. Good. And let me just tell you, your hair is fantastic.
Thank you. It's been many years in the making. So there you go.
I bet it is. Awesome. Well, Corey, we have to ask you a few questions just to kind of vet you
Sure.
for youth ministry. So tell us, when you were in 8th grade,
Okay.
what are 2 words that your teachers would have used to describe you?
Oh, maybe courageous
Okay.
and probably crazy. 8th grade was a lot of energy, and it's cool now because it's games with kids. But at that age, it was tough to have that focus in a classroom. I would say,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of energy.
In your family, where do you fall in the birth order?
I'm an only child.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Do you share well?
you'd have to ask my wife probably.
That's the biggest critique I hear of only kids is that they don't share well.
I do have an innate thing that these are mine, and especially with my own kids, like those are mine. Those are dad's things. So,
Awesome. Your favorite beverage, if I could give it to you right now,
Ooh.
which I can't, but
okay.
if I could.
You know, honestly, recently, sparkling Powerade has been my jam. I've gotten very creative with the beverages in the pandemic time. So,
Wow. So like mixing the two.
yeah, so like get one of those soda streams,
Yes.
sparkle it up, add Powerade, enjoy.
Oh, I
It's
like that
a
idea.
performance cocktail.
It has brought the creativity out
Yeah.
of you. I love it.
Yeah,
Good.
do something.
And I'm a big fan of mussels. I love my mussels, your
Good.
mussels, any mussels. So can you tell me what are your 2 favorite mussels if you had to pick them? Corey.
Ooh, I mean, I think Pecs, you know, left, right, double, double. And,
Okay, yes.
maybe just the left pec and the right pec. No, I think it's probably also the calves because you can get that good jump on with those calf muscles. You know?
Yes. And are you a biker or a soccer player? How have you honed your calves?
I like to work out. I think that I really enjoy sports because it keeps you physically and mentally disciplined and like keeps your head clear. But I also I bike with the wife. I run with the kids.
Yeah.
My 7-year-old bikes while I run with him now.
Yes.
But yeah, so just got to keep the temple strong, right?
I think he is officially vetted for student ministries. I love it. Well, Corey, you are so gracious to be with us here tonight. Obviously, everyone who is with us and you and I both know that life has seemed to take a big shift for us in the last couple of months for certain with COVID. But then in the last week or more, with just seemingly life moving into chaos.
Yeah.
And I just have come to the realization very quickly that my perspective and my knowledge is so limited. And I was challenged by Pastor Dale this last weekend in his sermon where he said that we have just got to directly go at ignorance and how we need to seek to understand. And I just thought you instantly came to mind when I thought of who can we have come into our conversation who can help us in understanding and help to broaden our perspective. So thank you for
Yeah.
being willing.
Glad to be here.
I acknowledge right off the bat that you are not the voice of every person of color in this world, that you can't speak for that. But you are a gift to us, and your voice matters all the time, not just now. And we're really, really grateful. So how about if we just start with you giving us a little background of where you grew up, the kind of family that you grew up in,
Sure.
And specifically, as you were growing, what do you remember about the culture in which you grew up in and the challenges that you had?
Sure. So I'm actually from LA originally, Los Angeles. I'm an only child of a single mother. I was born in Koreatown, which is a part in inner city LA. It is famous for pretty tough streets, to be honest. It's it's a tough area.
Yeah.
During the '92 riots, it exploded. It was loud. It was one of the places hit and aggressively where culture changed in an instant.
How old were you there?
I was 7 years old at that point. And, I think it was one of the moments where my mom realized like, okay, I think we need to try to get away from here. And I look at my life and I go, I was a Black kid born in inner city LA. Statistically speaking, there's no reason I should have a life of as many blessings that I do. But for the grace of God and tiny choices that were made, like I found myself going to whiter schools and white spaces and being able to enjoy two worlds, going to nice schools and living in Santa Monica during the day and being educated there and getting understanding of a lot of different perspectives. And then coming back home to inner city for a long time and then moving to West LA. And then we moved to Inglewood, which is one of the progressive communities. It's traditionally a really brown community that was being gentrified while we were living there, and just seeing a lot of those different life spaces and watching Los Angeles change. And about, almost 5 years ago, we moved to Minnesota, where, we knew it was going to be a very different life. And I don't think we were ready for how, honestly, just segregated Minnesota can feel most of the time. LA has a lot of racial tension, but it also has a lot of racial mixing and a lot of people trying to make that urge to get to know each other. And everyone's trying to reach out and just find out who you are a little bit, because you never know who's going to be who.
Sure.
Minnesota it's a tough place just to get into no matter where you're from.
Yeah.
But especially since groups are separated, it always feels like you're either in the right space or you're not in the right space.
For those of us who've been here all of our lives, tell me more about that.
Sure.
How do you see us segregated?
So, when we were picking homes, I remember little subtle hints about the way areas might be. And my wife is white, and so I honestly watch realtors and other home advisors try to give us clues of like, well, the schools in that area aren't great. Or it can be kind of a rough neighborhood. And, when we go to check it out more, we find out, it's just a browner neighborhood. Like, it's not necessarily rough. The streets are beautiful. There's nothing going on here. When you look for the population densities, you go to Minneapolis, and all of a sudden it's like, all of the diversity in Minnesota is in one or two small clumps. If you go and you start driving into the more beautiful parts, what make Minnesota so amazing, as you go to the outer areas, or if you travel into Wisconsin, diversity all but disappears. And in those moments, you feel like the only brown person for thousands of miles, because you might be. And that's a really threatening and scary place to be in. It makes the internal alarm of, is this a safe place, start to kick in and start to trigger and just be slowly binging forever, and slowly just letting you know, like, this place, which is supposed to be beautiful and calm, doesn't feel beautiful and calm.
Wow. So you're saying, Corey, that on a daily basis, that as you walk through a normal day, you have a subtle alarm, a subtle radar that's going off all day long.
Yeah. I know that I feel different, and I hear it in my head that what should I be paying attention to? Are there people here who might have general menacing intent just because? And that's before you even deal with police interaction situations there, but just noticing that in this world, there's always like this little ping that's just boop, boop. And the stress is always there. And I think the only way to deal with that little bit of pressure from our culture has been to just shut down parts of my heart and just be a little bit callous to everything, because it is hard to absorb pressure your whole life to be resilient. I think, one thing I learned about in college was just like, in America, Black people don't live as long as white people. And one of the reasons, it's stress, it's hypertension. It's the technical term for I'm a little bit nervous all the time.
Can you go back and remember when you first identified that stress, that daily stress? And do you remember how it came about?
Sure. Someone else asked me that recently, and I wouldn't have been able to trigger that, except I started diving back. I think it was a pretty innocuous incident in elementary school. I believe there was a kid having a birthday party. And up until then, I just kind of known there was difference, and there was a feeling like I knew that other kids went to different homes and I didn't. And I lived around a lot more brown people. But I remember him saying to me, you can't sit with here. And I think he said, you can't have a cupcake because you're brown. And I was like, oh, well, that's weird. And it's disconcerting. But then I remember the school kind of covering it up and just being like, oh, don't worry about it. And then the key was that student was one of the teacher's kids. So it wasn't even a recourse moment. And it just sat with me. And it sat with me at an early age, this small system here lets me know that someone says something like this, they never really reconcile it. It's just, you're different, you're brown, you don't get the same. And going on, I remember well-intentioned people would often patronize in a way where I don't think they did meant to, talking about, oh, you're so well spoken. And the undertone of, you're so well spoken for where you come from. You're like, but like, why wouldn't I be well spoken? It's a strange thing to say. And it wasn't until later, as I became a teenager, that I started to see that the police interactions, they saw me as a threat almost immediately. And for me, I'm still just like a 14-year-old kid.
Yeah.
So I'm not a threat in my own mind.
Yeah.
And in a group of other Black males, there's only certain places you can feel like you're not threatening other people, like you're not making other people uncomfortable. I remember feeling, my mom always had this thing about making sure we wore the right clothes, because my white friends, they can wear whatever clothes they want and no one's going to question where they're from or what they're doing if they belong there. But if I'm wearing a hoodie or busted up jeans, people are questioning, what are you doing? Is this where you belong?
Man. I'm just logging in my head my life growing up and clearly not having those same kind of stressors and those same kind of thoughts. Wow. You mentioned cops. I think for the video that we have seen over and over in the last week has been so disturbing and so shocking to many of us. Did you find it disturbing and shocking?
Honestly, I wish it was shocking. I wish it was disturbing. I took time before watching it again because the anger that wells up and the sorrow and the pain. And some days I really do wish we could just not, like, that just wasn't true.
Yeah.
I wish that the stories that I heard from my mom and the way that the things she prepared me for weren't real things to be nervous about. And then you see that and you sit there and you watch and you just, the lack of humanity. How do you sit with another person? And the lack of fear in an officer just not even being worried that what they were doing would be seen as wrong. If you or I were to do something wrong,
Yes.
you would do it you would hide.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't assume that the system would just be okay with it.
Yeah.
That's where the anger comes from.
Mm-hmm.
The murdering of a human being by someone who's supposed to protect you, that's outrageous.
Yeah.
The secondary anger comes from the fact that he didn't think that anything would be wrong with it, and that historically, this is stuff that just keeps happening. Minnesota has way too high of a number of Black men being killed unarmed by police officers in their own neighborhoods, like in their own towns. I mean, it's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can not be outraged when you see something like that.
Yeah. And we are, and our kids are outraged. And it's interesting, Corey, because we've got a lot of our students who are trying to identify the feelings that they're having, and they can't even put words to it. But the underlying is either anger or outrage. And some of them feel guilty for feeling angry, or they have no idea what to do with it. So for our kids who have felt that in the last week, what would you say to them?
First off, be angry. Righteous anger and understanding that you should be angry when you see injustice. And we all mourn as well. Like, be in the anger and then find a way to connect with other human beings about that anger. And if you're struggling to connect, realize that starting with the fact of mourning, realizing that everyone can mourn with the Black community on this, and that mourning for the loss of a man is one thing. Mourning for the loss of a realization that our society and our culture is not what we hoped it would be is another thing. We can all mourn for the fact that I believed and I hoped that America we all hope that it's changing, and we keep showing ugly sides.
Yeah. With how educated we are, how advanced we are.
How much privilege we have.
You would have thought we could figure this out by now.
Right. And if you're looking for groups to speak with, realize that there are other people groups. If you don't have other people groups to talk to, like find these other groups.
Yeah.
They're not hidden. They're out there. And maybe this is a place where if social media helps you connect with people who are different than you, that's a great place to start.
Yeah. I think we get into trouble when our worlds are so small.
Absolutely.
And we hang out with people who speak the same language we do, the same clips that we do, and we don't hear anything different. It's when I have the opportunity to talk with somebody who comes from a different perspective, who looks from a different angle, from a different lens, that I start to see something I couldn't see before.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mentioned that my heart has been hardened by seeing this type of thing for so many years over and over again.
Yeah.
And I even look to my white friends and my wife, who her heart only started breaking in recent years as we've been together, as we've had kids. And remembering that pain and remembering how much that pain can bring us into action is important. And I will say that, like, to young white youth in this culture, your pain can bring you into action.
Yeah.
And coming along as a supporter, finding other voices in your community to help just know that they're safe with you and to know that you want them to have a voice is important. And to remember, like, white people can talk to other white people in a way that I never can.
Yeah.
And you have access to white spaces and white family members, this whole part of America that I will never get to speak into.
Yeah.
And we need those voices. Brown people make up 14% of this country on a good day, right? Or Black people. And that's not enough to change the whole society by ourselves.
Yeah.
We need that white anger. We need that white outrage. We also need it to be able to sit with the anger long enough to talk to people who might disagree with you.
Yeah. Wow. Earlier, you were saying how you are actually really excited about this generation of youth, and specifically white youth. And we've been doing this series about influence and the idea that you don't have to have a platform, right? But you've got a circle of people who you run with, who you talk with. And so what would you say to those kids if they want to make a difference?
You guys will change the future, right? That this next generation, you guys will write a new story, hopefully. Let your peers know where you stand. You've got to speak up. You've got to see those moments where people just have bigoted ideas that they don't even realize because we all live in our own little bubbles, and just speak to those. And if you don't know what to say, like, that's a great moment to follow groups like Black Lives Matter, follow these groups that will give you the words and give you the understanding of other cultures and the statistics, the facts, so that you can have conversations with people that are meaningful.
Yeah.
And those groups, those friend circles that you have, I mean, that's the place. You and those friend circles will literally run this country one day. I hope you run it better.
Yeah. Before we came on camera, I asked Corey a clarifying question. I've seen POC a lot, which I had to stop. I can't believe we made it an acronym, but people of color. And I asked Corey, is that how you would like me to reference or to say brown? Because you've said brown a couple times. And your answer, I've never heard anyone answer like that. Will you say it, Corey, for the kids who are wondering? Sure.
I mean, I think the words you use, the words you use matter when you don't have a relationship. If you're a friend of mine, if you have love, if you have taken the time to get to know me, I don't care what you call me. You can call me Black, call me brown, call me African American. The hard part is that when we use these politically correct terms, you look at the Amy Cooper situation, and she used that phrase, African American, to threaten a Black man's life. The words don't matter if there's hate in your heart, right? And that's what this is. It's a heart issue.
Yeah. The greatest thing that you and I share, besides fun hair, I like to think, Corey, is that we share a love for Christ.
Amen.
And I am certain that God's heart is grieving and has been grieving for the way that his creations have been treated and for the way power is being used. And I think of the verse in Micah 6:8, which I've always liked, but it says, "What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God." And I love those three pieces, because at a time when kids, and frankly, us as adults, are going, what in the world should we do?
Right.
I think that those three indicators are great: to act justly,
Yes.
to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God, to lean into God and to say, let me see everyone in my world how you see them.
Amen.
But would you just give a word that is helpful to you, as far as if I were to ask you, where is God in all of this? How do you
Yeah.
lean into him in
Yeah.
this? What would you say?
I've been praying a lot. I think, God is with those with heavy burdens.
Yeah.
Right? And that's who Jesus was. That's who he came to. He came to those with a heavy burden on their shoulders. And in our society right now, there's a lot of brown people with heavy burdens. There's a lot of supporters who are taking on burdens with them.
Yeah.
And I think that is very much the spirit of who
Yeah.
Christ was, is that
Yes.
changing our world, and especially just changing American culture around how we deal with people who are different than us. Changing in a more even micro world, how do we deal with how our police force engages with people? This is a heavy burden.
Yeah.
I don't think people on either side have a complete answer yet, but I do know that if it always is the people and the protesters, whatever word we want to use there, versus the police,
Yeah.
if it's always a versus, we're never going to find, because
Yeah.
someone has to win,
Yeah.
right? I have a lot of friends who are both brown or people of color and also officers. And I realize that this burden for them is even
Mm.
more terrible, because of course we want to be able to trust that the police will be there.
Yeah.
But as a black man in this country, if something goes down and there are other brown people around, my first instinct is not to call the police,
Yeah.
because I know that that will most likely escalate a situation. And that's just a luxury that I think everyone wants to be able to have, that we can just trust that the system, that this country will take care of us.
I love that. Bearing each other's burdens.
Amen.
Because I don't care what side you're on. And you're right, we don't have to pick a side. We shouldn't pick a side. To lean into who God is and what he desires. And that's for us to love one another and to see each other as he sees us, and to bear each other's burdens.
And I love your point about humility,
Yeah.
because I don't think we have to know the right answer.
No.
It scares me sometimes when I hear the political side of this, and then speaking down with all the rhetoric.
Yeah.
I don't know the right answer how to solve this. What I do know is that there are people out there that want to be loving, and there are people out there that I love who are being hurt.
Yeah.
And that the only way we solve this is when the heart comes first, and then everything else can come aside, and we can get away from these sides for a
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
I've been truly encouraged by this next generation, and honestly, by seeing officers take the opportunity to lay down their armaments and walk with people, because evil is evil.
Yeah.
And we have to acknowledge that as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the word knows that we have to just acknowledge what's evil.
Wow. Thank you, Corey. Students, we've been talking about this idea that we want big things to happen. We want to have big influence, but we don't know where to start. I think Corey gave us some really practical, small steps that we can take that start right where we are with the people that we talk to and see every day. But I love, and I just want to challenge us all with this idea that reach out to someone who's different than you. Because what I'm hearing you say, and I believe this too in what I've experienced, if you come with the heart of wanting to understand and wanting to care, it doesn't matter if you use the right lingo. It doesn't matter if your question feels a little awkward. That person is going to know that you care and that you want to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, students, we know that one conversation tonight isn't going to wrap everything up in a little bow, but we are big fans of the idea that if we can't talk about hard things here at church, where can we talk about them? And we just want to at least get the conversation started. And so no matter how much conversation you've had, we'd encourage you to have a little bit more in the upcoming week with the people who are in your circles, and especially praying and talking with the one who created you and created this world, and who wants us to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with him. So Corey, thank you. Thank you for you and Liz being here today. And let's continue on, friends.